All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a brand new episode, because now the brand's changed a little bit, to the Paranormal Misfits podcast with your hosts, Chrissy and Nino, my
Hi.
little boyfriend podcast. Yay. So today is really exciting because not only is it a brand new segment into the podcast, but we have a really exciting guest, Annamarie Green. She is a clinical therapist and also does intuitive therapy as well. So she combines the soul level part with the physical and the mental part. So this is really exciting. Very excited to have you here. I enjoyed our session yesterday. So if you could just give us your background and then kind of like an overview of your work.
Yeah. So I'm a clinical licensed therapist, LCSW. I've been a therapist since 2020. I graduated from University of Pittsburgh grad school in 2019 with my master's in social work, and I graduated with my undergrad in social work 2018, and I moved to Michigan, and I became a therapist kind of in the height of the pandemic, which was like an insane time to become a therapist. Right. Everybody was looking for one, and everything was virtual, and I really started to love it even more than I thought I was going to. Everybody that I was seeing was struggling with anxiety and depression, but especially that anxiety piece. And I was going on my own journey because I lost my partner in 2019 and to suicide. And so I was in therapy. I was trying to sort my own stuff out. And what I was recognizing was like, things weren't really like working. They weren't progressing. I was really struggling. And I was at the same time learning different intuitive skills. I was diving into my own intuition and what those gifts and skills looked like. And I eventually did a 4-month intuitive healer certification course. And then I started to just bring it into my therapeutic practice with my clients, because I was recognizing that it was working for me and I wanted to see if it would work for them. And it was, and clients had way better outcomes. We were getting through things a lot faster. And so then in 2022, I started my own practice. I left the clinics I was working for, and I officially, combined these two worlds that I was working in, trying to kind of keep separate because I was a little bit nervous. But yeah, so and it's been great. The way that I essentially combine psychology, psychotherapy, and energy and intuitive work. And the reason that it works so well is because there's an energetic level to everything. Energy is the foundation. And if our energy is stuck and we have stuff going on in our energy, then, talking through our problems, it's not going to work as well. It's not going to be as effective, which is why a lot of people tend to feel stuck or stagnant in therapy. And it might take like years and years and years to get through one issue. Yeah. So that's a little bit about my background. Yeah. And then you wanted me to talk about what I do a little bit, like specifically? Okay. So I have a couple different things that I do. So one of them is I call it a mental health clarity reading. So essentially, which is what you experienced yesterday, somebody will come to me and say, here's my issues, whether it's anxiety, sometimes it's depression, sometimes it's like I can't get over my ex, or I'm afraid to go on planes, different things like that. And so essentially what I do is I use the intuitive side first, where I go into the energy of the problem and I call the person's energy forward, and I am able to tap into what is the root issue of this, like what's actually like specific memories, specific wounds and events that happened in their life that is actually causing this issue. Because a lot of times in therapy, our ego's in control. And so our ego will kind of keep us circling around the actual problem without diving deep into it. And so this kind of cuts through all of that. And then I'm able to pull, what do you specifically need? And because I have that clinical background and training, I'm also able to understand. So like your intuition works based off of information that you already kind of like know or have. So, I will be able to tell like, oh, okay, this is the type of therapy that this person needs. This is the type of specific strategies. Like for some people, cognitive behavioral therapy is great. It's one of the most well-known, well-used mental health therapy methods. But for other people, it's just not going to be as effective. For other people, they need more of like a psychoanalytic, which is diving back into the past more to make different connections. So it makes it a lot easier in treatment and more effective because you're not really guessing like, okay, what kind of specialty does my therapist need to major or specialize in? And then what kind of things do I need to integrate in the everyday? Because it can be very overwhelming. And I find that people can get burnt out with trying all these different kinds of things and it not working. So it just streamlines that. And I also understand what energetically is going on with different mental illnesses. So, instead of just, here are the symptoms, this is what you have. It could be because of chemical imbalance. It could be because of a trauma. I'm able to understand what's, going on. And yeah, I understand the science and the clinical aspect of it. And I understand like the value of all the science stuff, but then I'm also able to go in and be like, okay, what's going on a foundational energetic level? Because once you get that, then you're able to do things that are effective. Most of the time, my clients only need, 6 sessions before they're completely like symptom free and they feel a lot better. So long story. It was a lot.
That's fantastic. I'm shocked you didn't talk about dessert making.
Oh my gosh, I do love making desserts. That is like my I am an avid baker. I make so many things from scratch.
That's so funny. I'm an avid eater. That's crazy.
Yes, that's perfect. Those are my favorite people because baking is my love language.
I love it.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. I have a whole different like the way I blend energy work with baking. Like that's a whole another like area of my life that I love. So it's so fun.
So I will say I took part in the I did the session with you yesterday with the mental health clarity, and I know I didn't show it. Like I don't always I'm not always an outward crier, but like you were hitting things on the nail that I was like, oh my God. Like I was telling my husband last night, I was like, there were so many aha moments, and I was like, oh crap, I actually blocked that. And then you're like, well, here's the age range, and I'm like, oh, I know what happened then.
It's like a direct line, like thread of like, oh, here's what's happening. This is why it's happening. It's very,
like, and it's funny because you were talking about how you may have great relationships with your parents, but your parents can cause you a wound. And I was like, I have a great relationship with my parents. And then you were like hitting on little ones, and I was like, oh, there it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, that's something in therapy people will like say is like, oh no, I love my parents. My parents are great. I have a great relationship. And I'm like, that this doesn't mean your parents are bad. Like, but here's actually what you took, like what you essentially took from them, right? And how it's affecting you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna cry. Got it. Okay.
Yeah. Like I was sitting there, she couldn't see it. I had glasses on, but I was like welling up. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, I'm an outward crier. I'll be like, that's so funny to do. Just do that for like 2 hours.
I was telling her yesterday, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to offer him one too. So like we'll talk about that.
Yeah. I'll get you on like Instagram and all that good stuff, and we'll.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So it was for only an hour. I was like, oh my God, I feel like everything just came back to me, and I was like, oh, there it goes. That makes sense. This is why I can't do this. This is why this is happening.
Yes, yeah. That's one of the number one feedback that I get, and that I got when I first started to create this reading. Was that it's like years of therapy in like 60 minutes. Like all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I've done more.
I have so many questions then. I'll just look at you and be like, I'm gonna just undo it all. Just I don't know. The way like your phone takes a screenshot, if I fart and sneeze at the same time, will it cure it? Like
it was so funny. She touched on, and I thought this was really interesting part of it, was the dark energies, or like the little dark matters that come from like previous relationships and stuff you don't even think about. Could you go into a little bit of that?
Yes. Oh my gosh. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And it's so interesting because a lot of healers and light workers don't talk about it because there's still that like collective fear that if we talk about darker energy stuff, it's going to be like a witch hunt.
You bring it back in.
Yes. Yeah. But I see it all the time. And it's as I call myself an intuitive therapist. want to talk about it because it's important for us to know as parents, as just individuals. But essentially, throughout life, there are different energies, darker, lighter, denser, that kind of thing. And they can attach to us. And attachments cause a lot of issues, like the denser attachments and stuff. There are some attachments that are, we call them compassionate beings in the healer space. And they're not like causing a lot of issues, but they can just block you from progressing and growing. And those ones are easier to, like, as a healer, to remove, and even for the person to remove by themselves. But the denser stuff, which is the stuff that I see having the most impact on like depression and personality disorders, and these really, when we think about it on a mental health space, these really intense symptoms where like the pendulum is swinging. So like you're going to extreme emotions. And the reason for that is that the dense energy, it takes a lot of your own energy to sustain itself. Think of that as like the denser the being, the more parasitic it is. And so it feeds off of your energy. And so, the reason it can show up in personality disorders as well is because like it's kind of like blending with your essence a little bit. But the way, and because a lot of people are like, oh my, they're afraid of like everything. You don't have to necessarily, I'm not afraid of them. And there's just certain things that you can do intuitively. But one of the things I wanted to talk about is that a big example of how attachments from other people in your relationships can come about, and where I see it the most often, is when we have had a relationship or we were living with somebody who had some type of substance addiction, because substances have a tendency to poke holes in our aura. And if we are using substances as a way to numb, as a way to not feel, then we're using it from a low vibration. So what happens is then we're attracting and we're opening ourselves up to those kinds of beings to come like onto us. Because like as a healer, a lot of people think that like, I don't drink or whatever. And I'm like, no, I set an intention before I drink. Like if I'm going into having a drink, then I want to make sure that I'm in like the right mood, because otherwise that can the poking the holes in the aura can attract beings.
More,
and then they you. Yeah. So then when you have somebody who has an addiction, a lot of times they're also going to places that just have a lot more denser, darker beings, and they can bring them home with them. So I have worked with a lot of adults who grew up in homes with a parent who had a substance abuse issue, and they had a ton of dense, dark beings on them. And dense, dark beings also impact our physical health. So I'll see hormonal imbalances. I'll see, like somebody who gets a lot of migraines all the time. Like it becomes physical, especially because it's kind of your energy's way of telling you like there is something within you or on you, or not even within you, but like on you, that is not authentic to you and your natural energy. And kind of like when, you get a cut on your leg starts to bleed, and it kind of, to let you know, and it hurts to let you know like, hey, there's a cut here, that something needs your attention. Don't just ignore it. And so that's kind of what happens with our physical body when something is even energetically off. And also we tend to cord to things. So like if we are cording to a person, or out of fear, or out of something that is essentially like anger, or something that kind of drains our energy, it can also attract beings and stuff as well. So it is something that like people don't really think about. I see it all the time with our exes, so people that we have sex with. That is like the number one way that I see a lot, because I work with a lot of women, beings attaching, and they attach to like the sacral chakra and like, or the lower chakras. And so it can be the root cause of a lot of like hormonal imbalances, issues with like our period, just feeling very detached from, our femininity, and our creativity and our ability to create and all that kind of stuff. On a psychological level, this is where there's a lot of identity issues attached to it. It can also be something where this is like a big area for like anxiety to stem from, because anxiety is essentially energetically what's happening is you are it's trying to like protect your soul, right? So it's just like, hey, something is making us not feel safe, So we need to like have this survival strategy in order to protect parts of our soul. And then also depression, because depression is essentially our human self and our energetic self butting heads. So our human self is like to our soul, hey, you're a threat to our physical survival. So like, you need to like go away. You need to like do change, go away, shift. And so when you have a being on you, your human self is like, nope, something inside of us is a threat. So you'll see depression a lot. Did I answer? Did I answer
Oh,
That was great.
Yeah. I was about to say, I was like, I remember us talking about the exes thing yesterday, and I was like, fucking hell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Can't believe this. I cut you off a while ago.
Yeah. And it's really intense. And I learned the hard way, well, not the hard way, but like I was diving into, I took a medical intuitive certification course level 2 this summer. And one of the things I was learning about was like blood linked kind of like curses, if so to speak. And so what can happen for a lot of women, including myself, is when we have sex on our period, or you know, blood is involved, and you're having sex with emotion, and then blood is involved, you're creating a blood linked, you can call it a curse, spell, whatever you want to call it, you're creating a blood link. And that,
oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard about this from different like cultural backgrounds, right?
Yes.
So like friends with a girl that's like she's from Latin America, and she was like, oh yeah, that's like, it's blood magic, it's sex magic. And I was like, no,
we don't have to do that.
Yeah, it's not necessarily like a bad thing, right? But it's just our blood is very powerful, so, and it carries a lot of information. So then when we create these links, what it does is it kind of like merges of like their problems and your problems, and as well as a much deeper intertwining. So kind of like, this is where you'll see that you can't stop thinking about that one ex. Like decades later, you're like, I don't care about them. Why do they still pop up in my dreams and in my head? And and even where like maybe you start to recognize, like say you are with somebody where some of your issues start to look similarly, or like that kind of thing. So it can create a lot of issues, and it can be very, very draining. And so it's one of those things where it's not just a cord cutting that fixes it. So there's like a specific way to like unravel blood links.
My God.
May I ask a question? Like, what if, okay, so like plot twist, right? Okay. What if there's a connection to maybe not someone that you were intimate with, but if someone you were like super, super close friends with? Like,
so you're saying, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, not obviously, like, I'm not out here having sex with my friends. We don't do that. but if there was such like a bond between two people in a friendship space, what can that create and negatively? And is there room to also like undo some of those things?
Yeah. So you're saying, so if you were you felt a really close emotional connection to a friend, but then you're also realizing that it's maybe causing some more negative feelings within yourself or situations. And
like this person and I, we're no longer friends.
Okay. But if they still kind of like come up in your realm, and like you think, okay. So with that, I mean, it's not going to be like a blood link type of situation. But with that, it could be several, like, unless like you were doing something where like blood was exchanged.
Like checking the fingers.
No.
Okay.
We weren't like testing each other for diabetes or anything. We weren't
going down the craft way, you know, like.
I am 100% into men. So
okay, so there's several things that can kind of happen, and like when you're talking about it, what the download that I'm kind of receiving is like, if the person had beings on them and had a lot of intense stuff going on, like they might have had some like trauma, like a traumatic background, and like, you know, okay. So with that, there were beings, and there are like a lot of, when we experience trauma, pieces of our soul can tend to kind of go into hiding or go missing. And with that, our energy still our body still needs the same amount of energy to function. So sometimes people who have a lot of trauma, who have a lot of beings, tend to be what I call energetic takers. Like some people might call them energetic vampires. And so they're taking your energy or have taken a certain amount of your energy. And so that like connection or draw that you still feel, even though you're like, this is painful for me to be in this relationship. This is, you know, I don't know why I still feel this, whatever, is partially because there was an element of her taking your energy. And it's not even like a malicious thing. It's just what the energy is doing, but also the beings affect that. And that's where you can kind of have somebody who like is deeply emotional and like you had built this emotional relationship, but can also seem very, very cold.
Yep.
And yeah. So with this, at least this is what I'm perceiving about this person.
No, you are like, have you ever thought about going into therapy and being a therapist?
I know. Yeah. And so essentially like if so clinically what I'm understanding it clinically is like there's a personality disorder involved. And so that is an extreme survival strategy that becomes a part of this person's essence. So like we're born with an essence. And over the course of our life, sometimes like our essence can get protected, like anxiety, depression protects our essence. Personality disorders means the survival strategy is merging with our essence. And so she is essentially partially becoming her wounds and her survival strategy, but there's also a lot of beings. And so she feels very like unsafe and fluctuates and pendulum because like there's kind of like a lost sense of self. But so she pulls from people around her in order to try to fill those holes, but it never feels completely right. And also beings are also eternally hungry when they're dense, when they're super dense. And this, it kind of feels like those are a little bit dense. And in addition to that, it also feels like her anxiety language, because it always usually starts as anxiety before it gets to a personality disorder.
Yeah.
It like, at least, so sometimes when people are telling me about situations, I can only receive information that's relevant to them. Like, so you're telling me this situation, I believe in energetic ethics. So like, I'm not going to go all into her stuff and whatever. I'm just receiving information that's relevant to you. So like essentially what happened with you. So with you, and like she mirrors. So like she'll mirror what other people, and it's not like a conscious thing.
Oh my God, what the fuck?
So
I told you.
I'm literally, I can't even tell you. I'm like actually like trying to like bring the water back into my eyes so I don't start crying.
Yeah, it's so and so it's so that's kind of what's going on. But yeah, like that's what like it's funny because sometimes when people are talking to me about a situation, like I receive the downloads of like what's relevant to you. So because I do believe in like I don't go into people's energy unless they ask me to.
Right.
And I'm not like somebody who's going to be like, I had somebody once who was like, can you just like check up on my ex? Like, can you just like see if they're thinking about me? And I was like, nah, girl, that's not the kind of psychic
You're like, that's not what I do.
Yeah, I was like, I'm also a therapist. So like, why don't we actually talk about why you want to know this? Let's
want to sit there.
Let's go into the energy of this problem you're having.
Annamarie, do people think that you just have like a looking glass in the back and you're
do.
like, absolutely we can?
I'm not gonna lie, she was like, I'm gonna do your reading. And in my brain, because I do tarot and oracle readings, like I have like tons of stuff all like sitting right here, you can't see it. And when she was like, I'm gonna do your reading, I was like, so with like oracle, tarot, what are you using? And she's like, no,
for my reading now.
All right.
I mean, I'm not, but
don't be nervous. Actually, a lot of people say they're like, I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, I want you to know that only like I set the intention, it's in your highest and greatest good. I only get information that's relevant. I had a friend once who was like, are you just going to be like picking through memories of my brain? And I was like, no. Okay.
You're like, don't do that.
After,
if people
seriously, like after those readings, you feel like 200 pounds have been lifted off of you.
Yeah.
I was like walking around all day like
200 pounds off of me.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't think it actually will. I'll let you know though, because
okay, great. Because like I feel like you can categorize me with like the looking glass people for just a brief second. Like,
well, it's interesting because a lot of people think that I can like crystal ball go in and look, and I will say I'm one of the individuals like in my class that I was in that like I can see specific memories that are relevant to the problem. So like I remember the one time I was doing a reading for somebody and I was like, okay, I wasn't totally sure. I was like, my logical brain was like, that would not happen. That's crazy. And the person, like what I saw was like a young woman who was essentially like kind of kidnapped and locked into this room. And she climbed out and she escaped through the window. And I brought it up. I was like, okay, maybe this is just my intuition. Like it's an analogy. So like maybe she feels trapped and da 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 da. And I told her what I specifically saw and also like kind of the way that it was, why it was what it was showing up as today, like her anxiety. And she's like, no, that happened to me when I was like 21, but I just didn't think it was an issue because like I'm fine. Like I escaped. Yeah, I was like, okay, so let's unpack that. Let's
can we unpack that at a police department?
Right? I mean, like, oh my god.
Yeah, I was she was like in her late 50s. Like she was so like this has been decades. This has been like, and I see that all the time where like, so I'm seeing these specific memories that as the root causes. And like at first when I discovered that I could see memories, I was like, this feels a little bit intimate. This feels a little bit like it should. But it's very, very cathartic. And a lot of the memories that show up that I'm like to share are ones that they're ready to like essentially work through and process and stuff. Because a lot of people will be like, oh, I didn't even remember that happened. I forgot that happened, or I didn't think that was important, you know? Yep. So yeah.
May I also ask on the topic of that, when you bring up like memories, I know you're mentioning that like people often forget stuff, repress, suppress, whatever you want to call it. When you get to that space where you start seeing, hearing, feeling those memories, are those the memories like just personifying themselves in a way where they're like, we want to be talked about? Like, you know, how does that kind of happen with you?
So they don't personify.
Not like personify like physically, but like almost
like talking to me,
like bring that. Yeah, they bring themselves to the forefront.
So no. So essentially, what usually happens is, I'll just walk you through my process a little bit. So essentially, I'm calling the person's energy forward. So I go to my place of nature, I meditate, I go to my place of nature, or wherever I feel called to do the healing work. Because sometimes different people require going to different, we'll call them realms, healing realms. And I call the person's energy forward. I call like their guides, their ancestors, their healing team, my guides, and then the person's energy comes forward. And what I do is, that's why I always ask, like, what problem do you want me to focus on? Although sometimes people are just like, just go in and see what you find. So sometimes I'm doing that. Yeah. I mean, so like, and I can do that. I don't need a name. I don't need like, the only thing I usually like is an age, just because sometimes like I do readings for people's kids sometimes. And it's helpful to have an age because kids' energy is a little bit different. But I don't really need that much information. Like it's kind of just like the intention. But so I'll call the person's energy for it. And then I focus on the energy of the problem. And I literally energetically pull it off of you. So like, I'll like separate it from you. And then I'm reading the problem. And what the problem is essentially like, picture like a ball of yarn. There's multiple different threads and strings. And so I'm pulling those apart and looking at each one. And each thread either has a memory, has information of where it's rooted from, how it's impacting you, the survive, like it has all the information. So like I pull a lot of information in these readings, and it's because it's all like within this problem. So like, and then I'll go back and I'll see, you know, where are the threads of this problem or this memory or this wound or this whatever, where is it sitting on your body the heaviest? Like what chakra is it sitting on your body the heaviest? And then I'm going into that. So like a lot of times when I go back into the chakras, once I find like, you know, here's this specific issue, I'm also able to see like which memories are sitting in your physical body. So that's impacting your nervous system. So that's where I'll also see like, oh, okay, it kind of seems like it was between the ages of 8 or 9. And I'll literally see it like watching TV. So like I'll see a scene play out, like watching TV. And I'm also able to feel like the emotions of the person who is experiencing the memory. So say it's like a memory from when you were little. Like if I feel like I need a little bit more information as to what's going on or like whatever, I'll kind of like energetically put my hands like on the person or whatever, and I'll be able to feel the emotion that's going on and understand how it's also impacting their body, based like using my body as an intuitive tool as well. And then other times it's like their inner child or their higher self or an ancestor that's explaining things to me or showing me things. So I'm very, very visual. I'm a seer. So I see a lot. And then if I need more information, I'll use the feeling. And the knowing, which is like information kind of just drops into me. And then while I'm in there, I'm doing healings too. So like, that's another part of the read is I'm cutting these cords, I'm unraveling these, like the blood link stuff. I'm doing soul retrievals left and right. A lot of times I'm removing beings. Sometimes it can't all be done in one session, but like, yeah, I'm doing all the things.
How long does that take? Like, how much time do you give yourself before you're ready to talk to your...
So I will kind of feel into the person, like when they schedule, I can kind of like feel into like, do I need a full 45 minutes or to an hour before we meet to go in there and do the healing and the reading? Because like as I'm getting information, I'm writing it down, because like when you channel, you don't always remember everything. So like you have, like, at least for me, like so I'm channeling, I'm writing things down, the important things down, and doing the healing. So sometimes it's like 45 minutes to an hour. Other times it's like 15 to 30 minutes. It just like, it's very person dependent. I do give myself, like, I block off like 40 minutes. So that's kind of like my standard of like, okay, 40 minutes. And then sometimes like, if it's not enough time, I'll tell the person like, hey, I'm going to go back in there after we meet, and I'll go back in and I'll finish up the healing. So the healing's kind of what I end with. I get all the information first so that I have it for the reading. And then I'll start on the healing stuff. And also because then that gives, sometimes ancestors really like to talk. So like sometimes it like, I'm like, okay, now you can kind of talk to me as I'm doing these healings. And like, and one of the healings in particular is like a cathartic release for ancestors. So ancestors, if they want to get their shit worked on, you're going to be feeling a lot of things that they refuse to deal with and feel in their own life. And so sometimes the healing that I'm doing is like a cathartic release for them. So like I essentially become the channel for them to like release their emotions, and then we cut cords and we do whatever, and they can, chill out, and they're not like trying to put up, not obstacles, but just like trying to get you to learn these lessons.
Yeah. Okay,
sorry, that was like a whole side tangent. That was
that was great.
I'm so grateful you said. I'm also sorry that my face looks like I'm like this the entire time, because I'm literally like, I'm clinging onto everything you're saying. It's so beautiful.
It's okay. Yeah, sometimes I tend to I tend to tangent. So like I always
please. Like, okay, I was really good at math. Tangent all you want. Like,
okay. I love that joke. Yay,
This is why I'm also like co-hosting it. I'm just like, Chrissy's like serious and good, and I'm like, I'm just gonna make someone laugh. Like,
I love it.
So I noticed, and now maybe, well, no, not like a notice. So we know we have a Mercury retrograde. I almost wanted to say Gatorade because of freaking TikTok.
Mercury in the microwave.
Mercury in the microwave. So I know we have that going on right now, and then we also have the solar eclipse that's happening. Do you ever see like within your readings and everything, or during sessions, that like maybe there's more heightened awareness of a problem that you were like, where did that come from?
I wouldn't say like I see like where I'm ever like, where does this come from? Because like I'm also a very curious person. Like at my core, I'm a research girly. So I'm like, oh, I wonder, why does this happen? Like, let me see. I think that's why I like did so well in my certification course, because I was, a lot of people will like, or some intuitives will just kind of be like, oh, this is what I saw. This could mean this, but I'm like, no, why? Why am I seeing this? Why is this happening? What is it doing? I'm just like, I wouldn't say that. So I'm ever like, why is this happening? I don't see the like eclipses and Mercury retrogrades playing as big of an issue, because a lot of the stuff that I am working with or on it's been with them for a long time. Like they've been carrying it for a long time, but I see more people like scheduling readings like around like eclipses, because things are naturally coming up. Issues are naturally, like I had a person the other day who was texting me and was just like, I think I'm having a breakdown. Can I please schedule a session with you? Like, I was like, and I was like, yeah. So I see a lot more of people being drawn to do the inner work and to be willing to like face their shit a little bit more during those times. But it's not something that I see as like, oh, you're just feeling anxious because of the Mercury retrograde or because of the eclipse. To me, that is a surface level answer. It is never just because there's shit in the sky, like the shit is doing stuff in the sky. It is because there is something internally that is misaligned, that you're carrying something, but the shit in the sky is helping to bring it up. So like, and I don't believe in surface level answers. I wouldn't want them for myself. So like, I'm never like, yeah, it's actually just because, you know, your Saturn is you're in Saturn return, which I'm actually in my Saturn return right now. But I'm like, here's actually what's at the root issue of it. It might be coming up because of what Saturn brings up energetically and stuff like that. But Saturn is not the reason that you can't stop being angry at everyone around you. Saturn is not the reason why you don't want to get out of bed. Yes, I tell people all the time, I'm like, I'm an intuitive. I love what I do, but I'm also a therapist. And so that means like, I'm not going to give you bullshit surface level answers. I'm not going to just like settle for, I'm just meant to, like, I had so many women who come to me and be like, I just thought I was supposed to just settle and like live miserably, like live feeling like I am a problem. And I'm like, no, girl, that's never the thing. Let's live. Like,
we'll work on this. Let's unpack.
Absolutely. Like, we're not going to use excuses here. Like, it's like, so, yeah, there you go. Oh,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I definitely appreciate like the fact that you're so forward and honest about not doing surface level shit.
Yeah.
I'm sure at any point in our lives, the three of us can relate. We've been in situations where like surface level was acceptable.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
But absolutely. not doable. Like, okay, I'll take what you're telling me, but what the hell is it gonna do?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I did, when I first started therapy, after my partner passed, the therapists were really like trying to like logically be like, oh, well, you know, let's try to logically understand. So they're called, when we are, what's the word, like thinking the worst case scenario, or we're like, oh, everybody is now this way. It's called a cognitive distortion. And so my cognitive distortions, they were like, well, let's like, is this really true? Is this whatever? And I remember being like, no, but I feel that it is. And so like, they would give me these strategies to try to help me think better. I remember one of the worksheets was like stinking thinking, and like taking my stinking thinking and trying to turn it into like something else. And I remember looking at it. I was 24 years old. Like I have a 1.5-year-old. My partner just died. I'm in grad school. I'm and I was just like, no, I'm allowed for my, like, it didn't do a thing. It didn't because when you're experiencing these traumas, when you are feeling anxious, when you are feeling depressed, the logical brain isn't necessarily the problem. But like, if your nervous system is out of whack and you're energetically like being drained somehow, you have cords, you've experienced this huge amount of grief, whatever the situation is, of course your brain isn't going to think like, oh, life is just, this is just how it, like, it's so happy, it's so rainbows and sunshine, because the evidence around you and what you're avoiding but holding on to is not supporting the change in like thought processes. What I really needed was somebody who was like, all right, let's get into how much this sucks, and let's talk about how this, like, where do you, and where does it make you feel like you felt before? Because yes, my grief was because of my grief and the stress around me, but also a lot of stuff that was coming up was I didn't know how to deal with abandonment stuff. And him passing away, especially with the way that he passed away, hit my abandonment wound so hard that like I was not able to emotionally function for like at least a year until I found a better therapist. Like it was just, so, and then, Can
Chrissy, you ask a question if you want, but I have like a very specific
Go for it. I don't have any questions.
So I've been in a situation, my favorite person on earth passed away, my grandmother.
Sorry.
And when I tell you, I've studied psychology and I've learned like, there's a patient-therapist relationship.
Yes.
When I tell you my therapist sucked ass, literal doo-doo, because I just felt like what he was doing was giving me like the grad school practicum applications and shoving them at me without actually like, I'm telling him, I'm like, hey, I think I'm becoming addicted to melatonin.
Okay.
I think that like all of these things are happening. And he's like, well, we're going to like write a letter and you're going to set it on fire and all of this stuff. Like, you're just going to release that trauma. Like, I'm like, but friend.
Yeah, I have thoughts. I mean, I have thoughts.
No, like, so talk about like what it means to be able to like connect with a therapist.
Yeah.
Go
so, connecting with a therapist. So it really is a matter of like, so for me, I felt so raw and seen, and like somebody who like sees through your masks, who's not just, and not somebody who's standing like with you, not just like, okay, let's do these things so that you can actually just like get back to the trying to live life the way that it was before this tragedy happened, or like, you know, before. And that's what I felt like a lot of like therapists were doing. Like, even when, as you were describing it, I was like, oh, if you came to him and you were like, I feel like I'm addicted to melatonin, then that should be the first priority of like this, because, okay, so I'm a trained social worker. So I probably operate a little differently than like licensed counselors or like licensed marriage therapists. We learn differently, different things. So I would have been like, okay, let's talk about this. Let's break this down, instead of we're just automatically going to blame it on the grief, and let's, you know, do this ritual. The ritual is actually very cathartic. I've guided clients to that, but that is never where we start. That's never where we start for stuff. And so you want a therapist who challenges you, and who essentially like you feel seen by. You feel heard by, even in a way that like you don't want to be seen and heard by. Because I know for myself, like before I went down this whole journey and I had my spiritual awakening, I wanted to be perceived as like this really strong, nothing can faze me, like it's fine. And like because all of the therapists kind of like took what I said at like face value, instead of like seeing my body language or even my actions. And obviously therapists don't read your mind, so like it's not like it was a high expectation, but it was honestly just that the fit wasn't there. I needed someone who was just like, yeah, but like really, how are you feeling? Because you're here for a reason. And like that shit sucked. It would suck for anyone. So why tell me why it doesn't suck for you? Like, and who really just like kind of, you know, ask that kind of question. And that's what I would do. Like if somebody was like, oh no, I'm fine. Like, yeah, I'm sad, but like, it is what it is. And was very like kind of stonewalling me. I'd be like, oh, well, you seem to be doing really well. Tell me, like, why do you feel like you're doing so well? Like, why does this not feel, why is it just, it is what it is for you? And then that would probably open up a slew of like, well, I don't have time for grief. I don't have time for this. I have to It would open up a slew of information where then we can dive even deeper and go down multiple different pathways. So you want someone who sees you. Truly, that's like at the bottom of like what I believe, because even if you, who's not just throwing strategies at you to do, who's not just throwing, here's a to-do list to do outside of this. When your nervous system's dysregulated, you're grieving, you're anxious, to-do lists don't help.
Oh, no.
So, like having an intuitive therapist, if you can manage to like, you know, find, because I know that there are other therapists who are intuitive, and I'm training some people to do what I do. If you can get that, it makes it a lot easier, because then they're going to be able to see you on the soul level of like what's actually going on and meet you where you're at. And that's another thing. You want a therapist who meets you where you're at, who listens to like where you want to start. I don't care if they're like, oh, I think we should start with like the anxiety. If you're like, hey, I think I'm addicted to melatonin, which tells me you also are struggling to sleep, that you are unable to sleep. So like that's where then we should focus. Like, and I can't speak for all like therapists, but I know like social workers were trained to like look at the whole, all of the shit, like not just the clinical, you know, and panic attacks and whatever. We're looking at all those different areas of the person. So,
thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I hope that was helpful.
No, that was
okay.
That's a great overview. And I think the way that you're, not only the way that you approach, but hearing that you're training other people to do this, like you're circumventing good into the world.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. I want it to be easier, because like I don't want to be stuck anxious or depressed or whatever. I
actually don't have time. Like I'm
like, I want to live my life. Like I want to enjoy life. I don't want to I can't just go through the motions. I know people have in other generations. It's not me. I can't do it.
Yeah. Like I want it to end with me. Like whatever I came into, because I didn't opt in to be born. Like,
I was pulled out.
But I want to do my part, and that's why I'm so adamant about like timing it well to have kids, because I'm like I want as much of it to end with me before I
and like kids are the biggest like triggers, and I mean that in such a loving way. Like your shit comes to the surface when you have kids. I was just lollygagging around, had my 10-year plan. I was like, I'm not one of those emotional girlies. I was just doing life. Not a care in the world. Was like, I definitely don't need therapy. I've never been anxious. My anxiety speaks in a different way. I've never been depressed. My depression just, showcases itself in a different way than like the DSM-5, specifies. My daughter. Yeah, that's another thing is like
good old DSM-5.
That's another thing is like I tell people all the time, I'm like, oh no, this is depression, and they'll be like, but the DSM-5 and I was like, no, it's just, and then I get into like here's why, here's what, all that kind of stuff. Like I'm an upper, so like my depression showcases itself by like I don't struggle getting out of bed. I hyperfixate and become obsessed with my goals, and I'm like, oh, I don't need to sleep. I'm just working hard. I'm just being productive. I overly want to go out. I don't want to sit still. So like that's how.
So I have depression. Got it.
It's intense. Don't worry. In your reading, we'll get into it. We'll see which one it is.
I'm like subtly dropping context clues. I'm like, not that you need anything. You're so amazing. Okay, I think I also just want to ask this for the context of like what we do on the podcast. Can you see like entities?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can we get into that?
Yeah. Okay.
And can it not transfer to any of us if you talk about it?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, I can see entities. That's like I usually feel them before I see them. So like somebody has some really dense ones. The compassionate ones you don't always feel. You'll see them when you go into the reading, but you're not like feeling them because like they're not draining energy. They're kind of just like blocking it because they actually think that they're helping you. Compassionate beings, a lot of times we call in when we're like going through life and we experience some type of trauma and we feel like we need safety and protection. So that's kind of just calls these little beings in and they're just like, we're just going to blanket you, or we're just going to like shield this part of your soul. And so like those ones aren't like, those ones are kind of like, okay, they no longer need you. Like they're safe in this way. So like, it's actually kind of like letting them know you're okay before they're willing to like release from you. And then like, we move them up, we will move them into the light. The dense ones are the ones that I can feel from that. I'll like meet someone, I'll be like, I really want to do a being release on you, but I don't want to just throw, I don't want to just be like, hey, I'm sensing some beings on you. Can I heal you?
Like you don't want to like, what's her name? The Long Island medium, Teresa. You don't want to just walk up into someone at like a DD's Discounts and be like, did your dad die?
All of my ethical training of like, they need to like self-determinate. Like, I'm just like, no. If they're meant to come to me or any other healer, they'll find their way. But like
ma'am, this is a Kmart. Like
literally, yes. So I do see them. I feel them first. The denser the beings, the easier it is to feel. And like most people will actually feel them too. Like you just like that kind of gut feeling of like, I don't know, like something just feels like not right. Something just feels, not like this person doesn't necessarily feel like safe to me, even if it's not like a physical threat, but kind of even like an emotional one. Especially if you're tuned into your body, like you're going to pick it up. But then when I go in, I do see them. I don't really focus on like the details of what they look like because they all can look a little bit different. And most of the time there's protocols that you want to put in when you're doing a being extraction to make sure that they don't like try to come onto you or your space when you're extracting them. Because a lot of times not a lot of times, they don't want to go. They're usually a little bit cocky like I did. So me and my healer friends, They're actually like people that I'm training, but one of them helped train me like in different things. And we had an individual who she's narcissistic. And it was escalating to like where you were starting to feel like she was starting to show signs of like aggression. So like, she like at one point was like, oh, I like, why do you have this knife? And she was just like, oh, just because. And like different things where you were just, it was unsettling. So like there were different symptoms that were like, and my friend came to me, and she was like, here's what's going on, this is this person, can you just help me, like can you? And so what I did, because technically like we didn't this woman was not in the space where she was gonna like be like, yeah, I go into my energy, but we were worried about like safety of, she had a kid and a partner, and so we were worried about safety. And even though she didn't necessarily threaten anyone, but the vibe, like I was like, we need to like remove them from the home right now. Like they need to go somewhere. Yeah, the vibes were. I was like, then what I do if somebody is not in the capacity to be able to like give consent, essentially I go to their higher self and I'm like, is this aligned with them? Do you allow this? Can I go into their energy? And like a lot of times it's yes, sometimes it's no, sometimes it's like no, this is part of their contract, this is part of their shit, don't do anything. We went in and the beings were like, those were the most intense dense beings I've ever experienced, and they are from a dark realm, and they are very aggressive. They like take energy, like so much so that it like eroded her essence so much that it was essentially like just these beings operating her life. And they were in the house. They were like, they had made a home in the house, in her body. And it took 3 of us, and we're all healers. One of my friends is a shaman. Like, so like it took all of us to remove at least a dozen of them. And they were so heavy, like the entire time I was like gagging as I was like doing the work. And you have to really like, one person was like holding so that they didn't get out of the protocol of like, we bubble it up so it doesn't like come out into us, into our home, into our space, into the people around us. And then we removed it. We sent it up to like light prison is what we call it. Or like we send it up there unless they want to turn to light. Most of the time they don't want to turn to light. So we put them in light prison, and we banish them like energetically from this realm and everything. And then we had to close. So when you have that many beings, and part of it is because she was exposed to beings like at her job, and growing up. So we close, and then because they were so dense, they had been opening portals in her home, which allowed other beings to like come into the home. And like her son was experiencing night terrors, and like there were all these other things that were also happening with people around her. Like just so we had to close all the portals. We had to like, it was like a whole thing. And then I went in and like I was talking to her inner child, like the piece of her essence that was still there, that was not eroded, and like we had to like pulling light energy back in to like, because what happens when you have somebody who has that many beings on them and they've been operating so long like that, when you just remove them and you're not pulling light in, the body is going to have a severe reaction and it could actually regress. So you want to make sure you're pulling light in, as well as grounding and protecting and stuff. So and those beings were like, I don't know how to describe like what they looked like. Some people will actually get the details like of like, oh, they might have looked like this. For me, I see them as just like just picture like a giant that is so dense and heavy. And like, I'm trying to think of like a movie where
like the Harry Potter troll and Sorcerer's Stone.
Yes, but like all black, that mixed with a Dementor.
Respectfully, fuck.
And not everyone, like most of the time you're not gonna experience those kind of dark energies, because there has to be a level of your energy is like at that level. So like, if you're not grounding, shielding, protecting, and you're just kind of like surrendering to those, like, yes, it's gonna attach and stuff. But if you are, I'm sitting with myself, I'm trying to like, I'm allowing my emotions to happen, and I'm also, you're just at a higher kind of like energetic frequency, you're not going to have those issues. They're not even going to be able to attach to you. There has to be a level of like you meeting them where they're at and them like being at this level. So like I don't have to really worry about them attaching to me. Like if they tried to attach to me, it would almost like burn them, if that makes sense, because I'm operating at this higher level. I do cleanse and stuff like that because although they can't attach to me, they can chill in my home. I had a situation where there was a somebody psychically cursed me or tried to, and that's like a whole I don't know if we have enough time to even get into that, but
no, you can go for it.
Please touch on that.
So a lot of people are intuitive, magical, like all of us have the ability to be. So then there's something that can happen called psychic cursing. It can happen consciously or unconsciously. The consciously ones are a lot of times way more like nasty and gross. But essentially what happens is, and I'll kind of break down the energy of a spell. And a spell is essentially some type of you're speaking out words, you're like, or visualizing what you would like to happen, and there's emotion behind it. Because emotion it's energy in motion, but it also holds a lot of your own magical properties and ability to like manifest and create. So a spell is essentially like, okay, directing your specific energy and magic into this desire that you have. And it's a lot of times towards another person or a situation. And like people do spells all the time. They just like prayers in them of themselves are just spells, like the source, like I want this thing to happen, or please, blah, 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 blah. Even music in some ways, like when there's emotion and there's words, spells.
We gonna get into that in a different episode.
Yeah. Oh, the energy and the spell magic of music. Oh, I talk about my
masking and all that.
Yes. But essentially when it's consciously done, somebody, a lot of times, yes, they're in the woo-woo world, but they might be like at a lower frequency of like buying revenge spells on Etsy, or like, like that kind, which is a thing. And like, working with.
Are you dead ass right now?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Have you ever like gone
to go look on Etsy?
I'm not even gonna put that in my IP search realm.
Yeah, no, I didn't think it was like a real thing either until I just I was scrolling and I just saw different people, and like I had someone who I was doing it, and I was like, that is not good. You're not bringing good things to yourself. Like you're not, this isn't healthy. But essentially like that kind of frequency, that kind of operation.
Got it.
And so essentially like they might work with a witch, they might just, be doing stuff themselves, but they wish ill upon you. They wish like, like whatever it is, terrible things happen to you, whatever. And so essentially what happens is like energetically that like comes to you. So it's called a psychic curse. And a lot of times what happens is they end up sending beings to you. And it can be very, very intense, and it can cause you to feel very depressed. It can cause you to feel very blocked. And I actually experienced it recently this past January. But, and what happened is I actually like took it from somebody that I love. Somebody was actually trying to like psychically attack one of my family members. And I am a very, like my energy, I don't even know how to describe it, but I'm very protective, even energetically, of my family. So like I'm always shielding them. I'm always grounding them. I'm always like making sure like my parents' home is like on lock. Like I'm always like just whatever. I'm just like all of my siblings, all like my parents, everything. And so I took it on for one of my siblings, and it was the gnarliest thing. And it was like there were these beings, and I knew something was off. But I thought I was like, maybe I'm just like going through a really hard time, like a dark night of the soul type of thing. And I was telling my friends, I was like, this was the only time I've ever experienced like depression where I was like, I don't really want to get out of bed. Like, what am I even doing? Like, which is not me. Like, I'm always like, if I am depressed, I'm like, okay, we're going to work out for like 4 hours. And like, then we're going to do all these things. But it was a very different experience. And one of my friends was like, something like, I was like something isn't right. And they were like, somebody is like maliciously like attacking you energetically, and like get your ducks in a row and type of thing. And then my daughter, actually, we were sitting in bed the one night, and it was in the morning. She came over to my bed and she was like, hey mom, she's like, how do you know, like how do you know our house is protected? And I was like, what do you mean? she's like, you know, like how you always, like we grid, like I teach, cause I teach her how to shield and grid and everything. And she's like, you know, she's like, I see our grids. But like, how do we know that it's like working? And I was like, well, because we shielded and we gridded and we set intentions and we work with the archangels and I went into that whole thing. And she was like, well, some spirits have been trying to get in. And I was like, okay, tell me more. Like I was like a little alarmed, but then I was like, okay, tell me more. Like what kind of spirits? And she was like, well, I was like, are they like nice? I was like, sometimes, you know, we can have angels and stuff that come and like, and she's like, no, they're not like really nice. And I was like, and then I was like, well, do you mean like souls of, yes, because she called them souls. She's like, and I was like, do you mean like souls of the people that like come into our home? Like, you know, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so. And she's like, no. And I was like, okay, so like, tell me about them. What do they look like? What do they feel like? And she was like, well, one is the soul of lava. It burns you. It burns your soul. And she's like, and then the other one is the soul of rock, and it makes you feel so heavy and it like crushes you. And she's like, and the other one, what was the other? There was a third one. Oh, of sand. And it just kind of buries you. And I was like, oh, and where did you like see them? And she was like, they were trying to get in, but they couldn't get in through the window or through the house. So they've been like kind of like waiting like outside the door. They're trying to get in. They've been trying to get in for like a couple of days. And I was like, I immediately called my friends. I was like, no, I need help. I was like, I need backup. I was like, if Scarlett, like cause I'm very, very protective of her energetically. And so like, and she's very, very intuitive. Like she just, sometimes she said, like, she'll talk about, she was like, remember when we were back in God, Mom? And like, and I'll be like, sure. But so when that happened is when I like, it kind of snowballed of me like talking to my friends, and we did a whole like thing of my house and we cleared it out. And it like, that's when I found out specifically who, I knew right away who it was. Actually, like intuitively, I was like, oh, it's this person. And so then it was a level of, because you can shield and protect. Like this is not something where I think a lot of people feel like if they even learn about this stuff, that means that they're susceptible and there's nothing they can do about it. But things like grounding and shielding, if you are somebody who is not like in the woo-woo world, but you're like religious or like Christian, like your prayers and things like that are the same as like setting those intentions and grounding and shielding and like grounding into your prayer. So not just like, okay, please protect me, but like adding feeling into it. And you also just like want to be aware. Like, so one of the issues is if you're leaving your body a lot, it makes you more susceptible to beings. So like when you don't feel safe in your own body, when you feel like you can't take like experiencing the world, which happens a lot, it can just attract different beings. But you also do want to make sure, especially if you are somebody who is more spiritual, intuitive, you're doing energy work, you want to make sure your house and your home is gridded and shielded and protected and rooted into the earth and light energy, because those beings are like no joke. They're no joke, and they can be very, very sticky. And then if you feel like you still need help, talk to a healer, a curandera, a shaman, anything like that. And if you are somebody who is buying Etsy revenge spells, I highly, highly suggest you don't do that, because it's also opening you up to the beings and to darker realms and darker, like just energies and entities.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm not doing that, but I can like imagine.
Yeah. It kind of like it can plunge you deeper into the issues you're already experiencing. So did I answer like your question about beings and like psychic person and like, okay, I just want to make sure
more than expected.
Okay, good.
So then this is a little on topic, off topic. So obviously we talk about paranormal and stuff. So I always wondered this about like paranormal investigators. So like for people who maybe move into like an old house and maybe they don't know it's haunted, but then they do get an attachment. Like, is that kind of like in the same realm as like the beings and everything? Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly like the same type of thing.
And that's why I won't buy a house with a basement or an attic.
Yeah. For me, I'm just like, so I have a friend who specializes in clearing houses. Like she's worked in like the home Airbnb industry, and she's like, so I was like, I'm not buying a house unless you've energetically checked it out.
Right.
Period. Like I was like, you're gonna go in energetically. I was like, and she's like, girl, yes. And I was like, and then you're gonna like cleanse it. Cause just like, but I will say when you do buy a house, or when you move into a new place, they always tell you like clean it before you move all your shit in. Like you clean it. That is a very important step energetically.
Like scrub.
Yeah. So like, you know, you're washing the walls maybe before you move, put your pictures on, and you're washing the floors before you move your couches in, and you're vacuuming and whatever. Do that. Not just because it's clean and, you know, and it's good to do that before you put all your shit in there, but because it washes away the intentions, any like emotion from the people that lived there before you. If there are beings that are not like dense and stuff like that, it's also going to like push them out. Like open your windows while you're cleaning. Like there's a reason that some of those, you know, practices that, you know, we think of like our great-great-grandmother always opened the windows when she was scrubbing the floors and the walls, and like it made the house cold, but like it gives the energy a place to go, to leave. So you want to do that, and that helps you to make sure you're not like chilling with other energy or beings, like compassionate beings that are left over from somebody else's. So always do that. That takes care of like a majority of it, but there are like situations where there can be denser stuff, or there can be, you know, like souls that are not like, they're just, yeah, they don't feel like going. And then that's when you go and you work with like a paranormal investigator or a healer, and you know, they do their thing.
I've always wondered about it, right? Because you watch like Ghost Adventures. Zach Bagans loves to call everything demonic. So I'm like, how are you? Are you not human anymore? Like everything you go into is demonic. I mean, so what's wrong with you now?
Yeah, I mean, for that, there are certain people who just like, their purpose on earth and their energy and their soul is so like, A, so protected, but B, like their higher self is able to like really like protect them from it. And so most of the time those individuals have lived past lives doing similar work, or like they're able to pull from kind of like a past wisdom. And so they don't need to consciously do that stuff. Like my best friend, her soul is like so advanced and has lived like whatever, where like she doesn't have to really like do all of the grounding and shielding that I do. Her soul just chose that like, hey, I don't need to do that. Like this lifetime, it just happens. Like she doesn't get beans on her, doesn't whatever. But there's those of us that kind of were like, we either really liked it and it's part of what we need to learn to live out our soul purpose, or maybe when we get down here with free will, we made certain choices that, you know, kind of veered us off. And so then we find ourselves in environments that are very, very like, and even, you know, the best well-prepared person, when you are thrown into an environment where it's very like dense and things like that, like there's still a level of like, okay, just like protect me, like setting that intention and stuff. So
just like keep me safe.
Yes, exactly.
How often do you find past lives have a really big impact on the person currently, especially with like any of like their maybe like their mental health issues or physical?
All the time, in the sense of a lot of times where I see past lives playing a role is actually in kids. So from like ages 0 through 21, we are rapidly working through a lot of past life shit. So like when I see kids, like so I have parents who will come to me and be like, my child is super anxious, or they're like this. And I'll do a reading for the child, but like I tell it like I'm talking to the parent. I'm not talking to the child about it. And like you imagine like just talking to a 3-year-old or like a 6-year-old being like, here's what's going on. Like,
I don't think they're gonna get it.
Right? They don't. So I'm talking to the parent, and a lot of times because like when a kid is going through shit, the parent also has shit. So like it's kind of like a dual reading a little bit. But the kids have past life stuff that is coming up and is impacting their behavior, their fears, how they're interacting with other people. Like I had a lot of kids that I read at the beginning of this, like, well, I guess before the beginning of the school year last year. And a lot of them had past lives as indigenous people in South and Central America. And a lot of them were like warriors who had failed, like not failed, but like who could not save their family and their community from colonization. And so how that started, how that was playing out in this lifetime, like early on, how they were trying to work through that is essentially like hyper aware of like, and not wanting to leave their family, not wanting to go to school to leave their family, and like hyper aware, not really struggling with like making friends because they just didn't trust people outside of the home, outside of the community. They always were overthinking people's intentions, and this like wave of kids is very intuitive and is working through a lot of stuff. So like I think that's also why there's kind of this like, I'm seeing a lot of kids who have experienced this, or have like past lives in that. And so it plays out in these different ways, but we're just seeing it like psychologically, kids who are unable to focus. So a lot of kids are diagnosed with ADHD. I don't believe in right off the bat diagnosing them with ADHD unless things are like so extreme. For a lot of it, it is either anxiety, like or the caregiver's anxiousness and unprocessed traumas, or it could be past life stuff. That like, so when you're in fight or flight and you don't know what the threat is coming from, think about like if you were being chased or hunted and you didn't know where the threat was, you just know that they were out there. You would be like looking at everything, looking in different directions, focusing on trying to hear, trying to see, trying to smell, anything that might give you an edge. That is what it is like for kids who have like past life stuff where, people were harmed and we're supposed to work through it before the age of 21, because that's when we start really solidifying in like this path and purpose for ourselves in this lifetime. And so we have to kind of get through the other shit. But also if we have a parent who has a lot of unprocessed trauma and emotions, or is just kind of chronically anxious because they got shit going on and they don't tell us because we're kids, the kids are picking up on that. They're able to tell. I know as parents, we think we hide things really well. Our kids are biologically attuned to our physical reactions. There were multiple studies done that when a like 2-year-old was across the room from their parent and not like playing with a toy, not even looking at them, and the parent received a stressful text message, like something that stressed them out, and the parent's heart rate increased, the child's body mirrored the same exact movement, the same exact like heart rate. So just on a biological, even if you want to take the woo out of it a little bit, your kids are attuned to you. And so, but when they don't know what the issue is, then they go into that, okay, the threat could be anywhere. I don't know what it is, but I know that mom doesn't feel safe. And so I can't be safe. I can't feel settled because of that. So that's where I see a lot of past life stuff come up. With adults, sometimes it shows up in specific relationship issues. So like maybe issues with mom, like if you have a strenuous relationship with mom or dad, or like a sibling or whatever, even like specific issues that you might have like in partnership sometimes that keep coming up. It's usually past life linked, but I don't see as much like past life stuff with like our mental health symptoms as much. It's more kind of like patterns. So when you kind of see specific patterns, there's a lot of times where you see past life stuff.
Anita's going, oh my God.
I'm over here like, I know I'm sitting still, but I just ran a marathon.
Yeah.
Like the way you described, I would say first of all of that. When you got into like how children, like you said, can like mirror.
Yeah.
That one hit.
Yeah.
That one like gut punched me.
Yeah. And like people don't think about it, but like it's definitely like if you think about it that way, like they don't even have to be looking at you and their body is mirroring you. So imagine when they are observing you, when they are looking at you. Like my daughter knows. One time what did I do? Oh, I like pricked my finger, like I hurt myself in the bathroom. And I just was kind of like, ugh. And my daughter was like, hey mom, are you okay? Kind of felt like something was like wrong. And I was like, I'm fine. Can you keep your energy over there. I was like, mommy is fine. I will tell you if something is wrong. Cause like I do, like if something is bothering me and I'm having feelings, I'm like, mommy's just feeling stressed. Everything is okay, but I'm going to be processing it. And then what that does is it allows her body and her mind to be like, oh, okay, this is the source of this.
Got it.
I don't need to be like hyper vigilant anymore. Like mom, like, so I do that because I know how that does, like what that can do. But yeah, it's just, and people don't think about it. And I was talking to my friend who's a family therapist in Texas, and she works with kids. And I was telling her about like the intuitive side and like explaining ADHD on an energetic level. And she was like, oh yeah, I won't diagnose a kid with ADHD until we've done at least 3 months of anti-anxiety work. And if shit's still persisting, and even though they've made these other improvements, then we diagnose with ADHD. So it's like, yeah, but everyone, thinks that they do, but a lot of times it's just a trauma response. It's just anxiety. It's just you living in a household where caregivers were unregulated, weren't able to emotionally process, and were chronically anxious.
And like the earlier generations, like the boomers and the other ones, like they were never good with emotions.
Never.
So they were dysregulated all the way around.
All the time, used all the external things to try to regulate. And I was actually talking to this with my class the other day. When we see ancestral stuff, one of the things that people don't realize is that ancestral trauma, when it's passed down, intensifies with each generation. So, okay, maybe your mom who was carrying this ancestral trauma didn't have depression because like she was able to carry it and go to work and do whatever. She didn't let her sadness, the things that older generations try to invalidate us with. That's because energetically it wasn't as intense as it is with each generation. When it continues to go unprocessed, unhealed, and held onto, it intensifies, and it becomes more of a physical manifestation because you're holding that energy. It's changing your cellular DNA, your energetic cellular DNA, and so it's changing the way that you are physically emoting, you're physically existing, you're physically experiencing life.
Oh my God. Listen, if you wanted to tap into my mind, just say that. Like, girl. I'm nervous. I'm like so excited for my reading, but I'm also nervous.
You'll feel good because you'll also be great. Like I said, I do healing, so like don't worry. Like I've done over 200 readings. Like and nobody has ever come back to me and been like, that made me feel so crappy. I feel so terrible. Like everyone's always like, oh my God, I feel so seen. This is I was in therapy, like this is more than like 2 years worth of therapy. Like I had no idea. I feel so much greater. Like I have never had anyone who have come back to me and been like, I do not feel good. So don't worry.
Just to prep him a little. So I remember yesterday you had said that you saw like the color purple around me and everything. So do you see colors for everyone, or is it just like depending on who it is?
When I'm in the reading, I do tend to see things in color. Like color was one of the first ways that my intuition even turned on. Like when I was younger, I didn't realize it at the time, but like I would see colors and shapes. And I just thought it was like something was wrong with my eyes. That's what actually what made me be like, Mom, I think I need to go to the eye doctor.
Cataract, Mom, like
so I do see colors. And it was before I had my spiritual awakening when I was still in grad school. And they let us through like a meditation because they were trying to teach social workers how to, live a more balanced, less stressful life, as if the things that we experience are not to try to help us with that secondhand trauma.
Right.
And I went up to the guy who was leading it and I was like, hey, I was seeing like light blue and these shapes and these things, like, what does that mean? And he's like, wow, actually, that's like an energy thing, but like you could look into this. And I remember being like, nah, it's got to be like the thing with my eyes again. Like I'm like, my eyes again.
Eyes.
But yeah, so I see color. So, and I actually see like, even like, so when I'm separating the problem from you, I'm seeing different colors, and like those threads are different colors, different textures. And so then like to kind of help me like, oh, I'm going to pull on this one. And because I've done so many readings, like I have my own little like inner code of like, okay, ancestral threads look like this and might be this color. But a lot of times when I see colors, unless for yours, your color was much more about like your essence, and your power and your magic. But like a lot of times when I see colors, like when I'm reading, someone's like, I have anxiety. When I'm reading the anxiety, it presents itself in like usually 1 or 2 colors. And that tells me which anxiety language their anxiety is speaking. And then that allows me to like, it's easier like to explain, like, here are the root issues, like, here's like the general root issues. Now I go into like the specifics, but I'm like, okay, so maybe the anxiety presented as orange. That is a pleaser anxiety language. That means that there is a core fear, a core wound of abandonment. And if it's green which is overachiever, that is a core fear of not being important, not being of value, not being seen. And that impacts our heart chakra and how we receive and how we give love and receive love, or what we allow ourselves to. Pleaser impacts a lot of the sacral stuff. So what you create, being very disconnected from yourself, because pleasers mirror. Pleasers, so yeah, I can get into, that's a whole nother discussion. So I see color. It helps me understand what area of like which energetic chakra, which chakra it's impacting. It helps me understand even like your own magic, and lots of different stuff. So
can I ask, like, just for everyone listening, like with Chrissy having that purple, what does that mean?
Okay, so when I called her energy forward, so it was really cool. Like I told her about this. I was like, your path and purpose, it presented itself to me right off the bat. It was like she was like glowing purple, and she's a sorceress. So like part of her path and purpose is being a sorceress, and it's actually her interacting with people. Are you okay if I share this, by the way?
Oh yeah, no, you're fine. No,
I should have asked. I should have been like, hey,
I had already started about little tidbits of mine, so I'm completely fine.
Because I was gonna say, I was like, I'll only share like the path and purpose stuff, but I just wanted to make sure.
Whatever you want.
So the purple is very much about her magic, and purple magic, when it's associated with the essence, tends to be like trigger spiritual awakenings in other people just by like her existing in their realm. So like it helps their magic come to the surface. But what can happen is a lot of times with individuals who have this kind of like purple sorcery energy essence, is that people will either be really triggered by it because they're so afraid of their own magic. And so, you know, they'll be like, no, I can't believe that. Then people can act very rude or volatile. And because when we are when they're afraid of their own magic and your energy naturally kind of awakens that in them, they have to they have to shove it down some way. Or like people will tend to go through spiritual awakenings around you, tend to kind of like find and dive into their purposes. But that she's one of those kind of like keepers. She's what I would call a key. So keys really help people tap into their own essence and their energy and their magic, subconsciously or consciously. So it was really, really cool. And actually, I didn't tell you, but at the when I went back in to like check on the stuff that we talked about, one of the things was like with all these healings and stuff, you like got your crystal ball back. It was like because of all the like different soul fragmentations of like, you know, experiencing trauma and whatever, your energy couldn't hold like your little crystal ball, your sorcerer ball. But then when I went back in, like,
oh, that's so awesome.
That's amazing.
And so that just means like essentially you're going to be able to do this work if you so choose to a lot easier. Things are going to flow a lot more, and you're going to really be able to tune into your path and purpose. So like when somebody has a crystal ball, they're also really, really good at premonitions for themselves and like staying on path. So that's going to help you with that.
Awesome.
Oh my God.
So that's purple.
Incredible.
I have a friend who's purple too, and she's the bomb. She's like, she is an astrologer, and her predictions are like out of this world. I'm always like, wow, you're
no
awesome.
pun intended.
Oh yeah, no, it was great. Like she was telling me that, I was like, oh my God. And then I was like, funny side note, my favorite color is purple.
I love it.
I think that's why we bonded pretty quickly off the bat too, Chrissy.
Yeah,
my favorite color is this little like I'm like lavender. Like
He was like, what color do you see around me? Because I can, like, normally if I stare at someone long enough, which I try not to, but we were on podcasting, so I was like, okay. I see a little bit of, I was like, I see purple around you, which is really pretty. He's like, what? What color is this?
Purple is super cool. Purple usually means that you're a key, which means like you tend to trigger people or help awaken them. So yay.
I know my husband, it was so funny. I was telling him this yesterday and I was like, she was like spot on a lot. He's like, what? By leveling people up? He's like, I told you all the time you helped me level up. And I was like, I know, but still.
But it was
just hearing it from a different person who doesn't know me.
A person who literally doesn't know me, lives like away, like doesn't know where, like, doesn't
know where I live. That's
yeah.
I was telling that to my husband as to like why like I don't typically like, you know how like your friends are like, oh my God, have like a therapy session with me. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Like, you know me, you know my tendencies, you know my life. You can like premonition stuff based off of like pattern behavior you've seen me through. I need someone who literally lives in Egypt. Like someone who literally like
I was the same way. I was the same way in the beginning where I was like, I don't want anyone who knows me. And I am hesitant to read people who like I won't really read my family because it's too close, like emotionally. But like, yeah, I'm the same way. I'm very picky about like where I get my readings and stuff. Like I'm, you know, whatever. But and I was nervous about that too. Like I was afraid that people would be like, well, what if like, you know, because I was reading friends and family when I was first getting certified, because you have to do a certain number like of like hours and practice and stuff. And I was like, well, what if like it's just I'm going based off of information, but I have always been able to pool and understand information about people my entire life. That's I think why I was such a great therapist in the beginning, because I would just like get it. I'd be like, well, what about this? Like they'd be like talking about whatever. And I was like, well, tell me how this relates to maybe how, you know, you felt when your mom did this that we talked about in your first session and whatever. And they'll be like, oh my God. So like, I think that my intuition has always worked in this way, but it does. It makes a difference when the person does not know you and like doesn't know shit about you.
Because you started pulling and I was like, oh, I was like, I don't have anything on my social medias about this.
Right.
Because we had been talking for a bit. And I was like, I don't think I left that out in the podcast.
No. Yeah. No. And I love when I don't know anything about somebody. Like sometimes I won't even take their name. I'll just be like, okay, I'll go into, you know, this person's whatever. I was like, I don't need their name. Just let me know if there's a specific issue you want me to focus on.
This is incredible.
I know. You should write a book. Like I would buy it.
I know I have a couple books in me, and I know that like eventually it will be this. My like dream is to create an entire like I mean that what the one program I'm currently doing, it's like a whole I'm creating a certification program for people, because like I want this to be easier. I just feel like happiness should be easier, and I want people to know how to do things, and there should be an ethics for intuitives, because more and more people are becoming intuitives and readers and all that stuff. And so eventually I know I will write a book, because I know I have it in me. I just don't think I've learned all that I want to learn yet. I would like to actually get my PhD and in neuropsychology and social work, but specifically study how energy readings impact a brain who has experienced trauma. So are there actually parts of the brain or in the body that change when we experience energy readings? Like we know that we feel differently and that we have those like physical sensations of changing, but like I want to add some oomph of science behind it, so that the people who are naysayers are like, oh, okay, well there's some science, like it legitimizes it kind of. And I'm a research girly at heart. Yeah, I'm a research girly at heart. I want to know how it's specifically changing the brain. I want to know how it impacts, you know, our dopamine, our feel-good feelings. I want to know, like, because if there's an energetic shift, then there is going to be a physical shift.
Yeah. So I was going to say, I know yesterday I felt like there was nothing that could really irritate me. And then like I felt completely mellowed the entire day.
Yes.
So like no anxiety. I even was running late to my appointment, and I was like, oh, it's okay, I'll just text her.
Literally, it's so crazy the way that like the immediate relief is felt. Like I had a woman who had experienced terrible migraines for like 6 months, and to the point where she was always going to the ER. Like, and we were in a group together for something, and she like was like, guys, could you just like send like good vibes my way? Like I'm back in the ER because this. And I texted her privately, and I was like, hey, I kind of got the nudge. I was like, and obviously like, if you don't want this, you just let me know, girl. But like, can I go in energetically, just see what's going on and do some healings? And she was like, I would love that. I would try anything at this point, because I cannot function. And I went in, and it had to do with like trauma and stuff from childhood, and I cleared it all out. I like did some healings on her, and she has not experienced a migraine since, and this was like a year ago. And awesome. She was like, she didn't have to go back. Like she was like, I cannot believe it. She's like, I am now like a believer of energy work. It's like, that's like, yay. I'm so glad. I had like a really big cry when I told her like, you know, the root issue, and she was just like, yes.
Oh. That's right, Nina, be prepared. Get some tissues, right?
I mean, listen, I'm excited.
Yes.
I really am, just because like some of the things that you spoke of, Annamarie, I was like, I know she's not talking to me, but like she might be singling me out. And I'll be the first to say this. I mean, like I've told this to Chrissy, and I've said this like umpteen times before, like the ability to be humorous and funny is very much a front, because it is like a protective thing.
It happens a lot, yeah.
And I just don't want like random people, not saying that you're random, but I'm saying that like I just don't want anyone to have that like deep access to.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And I think that that's why it is important for like people who are working with intuitives, like you really want to you don't want to just let anyone into your energy.
No.
Because there's also, for me, and like, this isn't me. I was talking about this with a friend the other day. I was like, the fact that I have a clinical background means like, so there's some information that I will see and that I am privy to that you do not need to know, that you do not need to like cognitively have the information. I can do the healing. I'm being shown it because I'm a healer and I'm meant to heal it for you. But then and I also know as a therapist, what are other ways that we can kind of work through and process it on a physical level, that you don't have to like relive stuff, that you don't have to like, when I'm in there, I'm checking like, can they cognitively handle this? Like, is this something that because sometimes, you know, with healers and intuitives, they'll just slew information and then you're kind of left with it. And you're like, what do I do with this information, with this traumatic information? But it is also, you do really feel bare when someone is in your energy. I had my students practice on me, and I had never experienced one of my own readings because there had been nobody else who does what I do, and I was like, oh my god. I was like, it's so spot on, you're doing so well, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud. But
no,
like,
these are good
you're so good, guys. I was like, I'm so proud. But also like my soul. And yeah, so it is a little bit stressful, but I totally understand. And it is important that like, you're not just letting anyone into these like very raw parts of yourself, because there is that level of healing. You want somebody who has some type of like ethical practices, you know, because one of the other things that I think sometimes with like, and this is not to hate on the Etsy witches, it's just that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Right, exactly.
There's a lot of like blame, like, oh, you're anxious because your mom did this and this to you. And as a therapist, I don't do the blame thing. I was like, yeah, we make space for it, we validate it. That was wrong, that was not good, that must have been hard for you. But a lot of people think that they have to go and like tell their parents that they were shitty parents, or that this was wrong.
Oh, it's going to make them feel better.
The person, yes, to feel better or to heal it. And that's not the case. Actually, everything can be done internally. We don't need to tell your mom that like, you know, you took on her traumas and like, or that this did this and this. We're going to learn to help you to set boundaries, help you to feel safe in setting boundaries. It's all you focused. And so it's important that you, similar to like when you look for a therapist, you want someone who sees you and who is helping to like teach you healthy habits, but while also making space for you and letting you be seen. So it's the same with intuitives. I don't let just anyone into my energy. There's like, I have like a list of 4 or 5 people that I let read me, and that's it. That's
right. You're like, stop it.
Yeah. So I totally understand. Don't worry, you are safe with me.
Thank you. Like I'm big on like I've experienced my own, and I'm sure like Chrissy has, and you as well. Like that energy vampire, energy sucker thing in the beginning. That's like such a. I think Chrissy, that's one of the first things we talked about when I was like when I first like podcasted when I first like was doing this. We talked about a lot of that because I'm very specifically protective of myself.
Yeah. Don't worry. When we like talk outside of this, I'll also teach you some ways to like, you don't even have to consciously like, if you're around energy vampires, it's not gonna be an issue. Like, because there's people who are energy vampires that I interact with, or like, you know, whatever. And I'm not like, that's not a thing that I even have to like think about anymore.
Good, because I still want to continue being a spiritual hood rat. So in case anyone tries,
we love spiritual hood rats. Like,
in case anyone tries, I'm like, nope.
Yeah. You just like it's just I know it sounds very simple, but at the core of it, it is literally grounding, shielding and protecting, and being in your body, like letting your energy be in your body. So like the biggest thing that I see people who are spiritual are like, I really don't want to be around energy vampires, and they feel they have to take these extreme measures, is because they don't feel safe in their own body. So they're still constantly leaving. So they have to do these extra steps because they can't be in their own body. So that means we have nervous system work to do, which is also one of my things.
Ooh.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you for this.
Yeah. I hope that this was like informative and like,
Oh my God.
and you guys.
Are you? No, I got nothing from that. No,
Well, I know that we like veered off of like we wouldn't just stick with like the dark energies. So I was just like, so I hope that this was
this.
you know,
This has been great. Like,
okay.
I thought yesterday that like it just gives more. It eats the gifts. It keeps on giving, basically.
Good.
I
Good.
love
I'm
it.
glad.
It's
Can
so
I ask
awesome.
you, like, where can people find you? What have you got going on? How can everyone get a hold of you? Plug everything in.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
So Instagram is probably the easiest way to get in contact with me. Like you can just slide right into my DMs. My Instagram is at Annamarie F Green. And I'm wearing like a pink suit in my like little picture.
It looks so cute. I love it.
I'm literally just and
perfect. And then what I have going on. So there are three main ways to work with me. So if you just want like a one-off session, a reading, that would be the mental health clarity session. And that is a reading and healing in one. So that is, Chrissy, what you experienced yesterday. And you know what we will be experiencing. Where it's really, really great. It's an hour session. And like I go through and I give you all the information and I do the healings, and then you leave with action steps, because I'm really big on like, here's the action plan so that I'm not just spewing information and you feel stuck here.
So it just ends.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, no, here's how, like, this is not where you're going to be stuck. Here are the steps to get out of this shit. And then there is my longer one-on-one container, which is called, it's intuitive therapy. So intuitive therapy sessions, it is a 12-week container because to me, like, we don't need longer than 12 weeks to work on and solve whatever issues and symptoms you're working on. And so we have sessions for those weeks, and then you get like breath work. You get like you get support in between sessions too, like through voice note and stuff. You get healings. In the first month, we do healings every week. And you're also like, I'll go in and do deeper healings, kind of like on the ancestral planes and stuff as well, twice a month. And then I also formulated how I think therapy should kind of go. So we start with the energetic the first month. The second month is all nervous system shit so that your body is not in fight or flight mode. And then we do the cognitive, where we're doing subconscious reprogramming. We're doing verbal processing. The sessions in itself are like part therapy, part psychotherapy, part intuitive like stuff. So we usually end with a healing, a meditation. Before each session, I'm going into your energy to see like, okay, where's your energy at this week? Are we still like, do we need to process a specific emotion? Is there something that they have been struggling with or that's blocking them? And then also like, that's how I kind of, I guess, formulate the session that we're in. So it's really great. Every single person that's gone through it is like, I am not anxious about this anymore. Like I had a client the other day who was like, I can't believe it literally feels like I woke up and I don't have anxiety anymore. I don't whatever. She was like, do we even need the rest of the sessions? And I was like, yes, girl, we got to finish. It's like, we only have like, I was like, you have like 2 sessions left. So the last month I was like, we got to do the reprogramming so that it's like, it continues to stick. So that's like the longer container. And you like, there's other bonuses and stuff with that too. But then the third way is if you are like a healer, a coach, a therapist, a holistic health practitioner in any capacity, or you want to be, even my social workers out there. I actually have a certification program. It's called Intuitive Mental Health, where I essentially teach you to do what I do. I teach you to understand, identify, help heal, and treat mental health conditions and illnesses. And essentially you're learning where psychology and intuition meet and how you can use your intuitive skills and your intuitive gifts to help your clients on a mental and emotional health level. I know that there's lots of coaches out there who are like, I'm not a therapist, so like they need more support, but this is a way for you to help understand what they truly need and how you can even serve them better. So I have a massage therapist in the cohort now, and she was like, I'm going to apply it in, this way. And I'm just so excited. Like, it's just a way to be able to help other people more. Or even if you're just like curious because you're an intuitive and you're like, I think, I want to be a coach, or I want to do this. This is a really great foundational skill. And a fun fact is that over 80% of people are looking for a therapist who is spiritual, has intuitive energetic work, or is just like spiritual in general. And only 20% of all licensed therapists feel equipped to support them in a spiritual manner.
Oh, wow.
There's the need is like everyone wants somebody who they feel their soul is seen by. And so you're really learning how to do that. So those are the 3 ways. It's also a 12-week program. We learn all the things. There's skill work. You'll learn how to undo blood links, all that. Like I teach you all the healing skills.
Let's go.
Yeah, so lots of fun.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for reaching out and offering to come on the podcast. I was so excited when you started like sending me I was like, yes. This sounds amazing. I have it. Like I've always wondered about that space because, we all talk about everyone should go to therapy, even if you're not really like anxious or anything. It's just good to talk to someone. But I think the talking's okay, but I like hitting all of the planes, right? Because we always talk about mind, body, soul, and it always seems like something's always missing, especially in the health field.
Yes.
Because they're always about the physical plane.
Yes. And the symptoms. They focus on just trying to get the symptoms to stop. But I'm like, but the symptoms are stemming from somewhere. So shouldn't we address that?
So it's almost like the health and wellness space, fitness coaches are now starting to lean towards like, we want to be the preventative medicine because your doctor's not your preventative. They're just giving you something to coat.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I talk about this stuff all day because I'm so passionate about it. And I'm like, everyone should know, like, even like in the course, we talk about like the energetics of medicine, like that you'll take for like anxiety, depression and stuff. And a lot of people think that like, if you're spiritual or if you're like a healer, that you're anti-medicine. And I find that to be like the furthest from the truth. Like medicine can be helpful. It's just a matter of like, there's different things that you want to look at. So I totally agree. The health space it just needs to be bridged. The intuitive, the psychic, the energy. The health space. I'm like, just
all together.
It's all a part of the same thing from how you're describing it. I think they just people like in different health spaces don't need to be so combative with each other.
And when everyone wants to be right. And the thing is like, when you are in tune with your intuition, you can decide and decipher what is right for you. Yeah. Like it's like all the dieting culture for some people. Yeah. They need to have more fiber. They need to eat this specific way, but it's not true for everyone. But when you are just detached from your intuition, you're just kind of like, I'll try this. I'll try that. You're throwing shit against a wall and then you're burnt out, exhausted, and you feel like something's wrong with you. When in reality, like if we are able to help people become more and practitioners become more attuned to their intuition, they are going to be able to serve people so much better because they're going to be meeting them where they're at on a soul level. And I just am so very passionate about that because I care so much. I want that for everyone else. I would want that for myself. Like I also care about efficiency. I'm like, I don't want to waste my time. I got shit to do. I got places I want to see. I feel the same exact way.
That is awesome. Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. It has been such a blast. I'm so excited for Nino to experience.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
I just got you on Instagram too, so we'll
We'll link up.
Yes, you just let me know. I'll send you the link. I got you.
Perfect.
All right.